it going, Facebook Live? I'm going to go ahead and take the masks off because there are no patients over here. So we'll go ahead and start by saying welcome and thanks for tuning in to this little bit about shoulder health and lifting weights. Because I think the misconception is that lifting weights is inherently dangerous or injurious to the shoulder joint. But strength training when done appropriately is actually protective for the shoulder joint. So if you have any questions about your fitness routine or lifting or shoulder health in general, post them in the comments and we'll answer those questions at the end. So what we'll talk about real quick is kind of a motion orientation. So that way when I talk about motions, you know what I'm talking about. So the first one we want to talk about is overhead flexion. Right? So this is my thumb and my hand going straight up overhead. So that's flexion. The opposite of that would be extension, so my arm going behind me. Then we're going to talk about internal rotation, which is my fist coming inside. Then external rotation would be my hand going outside. Then the shoulder also moves in this direction, which is abduction, right? So think about aliens abducting the arm away from the body, and then it moves in two more directions, which is horizontal adduction, so you're adding it to midline of the body, and horizontal abduction, so then taking it away from the body. So then, the way all these things work together, I'm going to use Lori as our demonstration model. So everyone thinks about this as the shoulder joint. But the shoulder joint is much more than just the shoulder that we think of. Right? So the shoulder is actually made up of the collarbone, which runs across, the shoulder blade on the back side of the body, and the ball of the socket joint, which is the glenohumeral joint that we know as the shoulder joint. Right? So to get the arm up and overhead, you actually have to have the clavicle raised up with you. So you can test this by, if you take your own hand, put it on your collarbone, and then try to raise your arm with that right arm. So raise it this arm here. You should be able to feel your own clavicle actually move under your hand. And now we're going to think about the fact that the collarbone actually has to elevate to get that arm up and overhead. One of the other things we have to do, I'm going to flip around and then move the hair to one side, is the shoulder blade, right, when going up, actually has the joint surface for the shoulder joint, right? So the shoulder blade actually has to rotate up to get the joint surface to face overhead, right? So if you want to stay facing that way real quick, and then you can watch this section of your shoulder blade move as she lifts her arm up and overhead. So that's where it started. This is where it is now. And then slowly move down. Here it is. It's coming back to the hand. And that's where it starts. And then as she lifts the hand up and overhead again, you can see it's moving away. So clavicle has to elevate. Clavicle/collarbone has to elevate. Actually has to roll backwards a little to control that. Shoulder blade has to roll upwards, and then the shoulder joint actually has to externally rotate a little to get the arm overhead. So all these things are very coordinated, but we don't think about them just to get the arm overhead. Then, the special thing is when we start weightlifting, we're then applying a load on that, right? And whether that's Olympic lifting or just a simple dumbbell overhead press, you know, we want to be able to utilize the full range of motion and keep the joints happy. Right? Because if we're compensating or if we're not flexible enough to get overhead and we're forcing it, that's when you kind of get this excess wear and tear on the shoulder joint. So the golden rule of healthy shoulders for weightlifting is 3-2-1. Right? So you're looking for a 3-to-1 ratio of pulling to pushing. So that's all pull-ups, rowing motions, anything like that. 3 times more pulling than pushing. Right? So any push-up, bench press, overhead press, burpee, anything you do like that, you want to do 3 times more pulling than pushing to keep the shoulder joint happy. And the reason for that is pushing utilizes the muscles in the front side of the body, so the anterior shoulder, the internal rotators, the pecs, and things that keep us in an internally rotated closed position, which is kind of compromising the position of the shoulder when we try to get up and overhead, right? So if you want to keep your shoulders happy and healthy, you want to keep these balanced, right? You don't want to be dominated by the anterior anterior part of your body. Okay? And then the 2 part of the 3-2-1 ratio is 2 times more horizontal pulling than vertical pulling. And the reason for that is the main vertical pulling muscle is the lat that runs through here, but the lat is a really strong internal rotator, right? And like what we just talked about, this is internal rotation, and we want to kind of balance that with external rotation and retraction to keep the shoulder joint balanced. Okay, so if that was drinking from a fire hydrant, you can rewatch this later, right? This Facebook Live, you can go back and watch it unlive, relive. So, the things that we can start working on, some simple things. Abby's making me laugh in the background. That's the wonderful thing about live. It's candid. And Leslie's dancing in the back. So, one of the wonderful things about the shoulder is if we address a few common deficits, you could likely see some really big benefits really quickly. Right? So, one of the best overhead stretches you can do, we'll get Lori to do this for us. Is I'm grab the palm facing up. Right? And so we'll get her to demonstrate this in a second. Palm facing up and grabbing onto something that is at least shoulder height, if not a little higher, and then sinking into it. Right? And this is a really great stretch for the lats, as well as that external rotation we were talking about before. Right? So internal rotation here, external rotation here. Right? So grabbing on and sinking back into that stretch. So, if you want to kind of try that out, I'll kind of show you how. Get this one. And then her elbow's going to go straight. And then she's going to sink her hips down and back. And the goal is to feel the stretch along the side of the body here. If you feel pinching in the front, then you can kind of angle the body along the side. Okay? You don't want to feel the pinch. All you want to feel is a stretch in the side. Another common stretch is really beneficial is a pec stretch because, again, with computers and cars and modern technology, cell phones, we're all here. Right? So pecs keep the arms close to the body. So getting into a position of a pec stretch, okay, with the same side foot stretching. So we're going to demonstrate this and we'll kind of show that. So you can see her shoulders stay level, right? Same side foot is stepping, so she's not over-rotating, which is something we often see. So you only want to feel the stretch in the front of the shoulder and the back. You don't want to feel any pinching or any excess thing like you're trying to kill yourself, right? Within the shoulder, that's all we need. And so if she were to do this wrong, she would then be over-rotating, right? And you can see her shoulders are now not level. Right? So same thing in this direction. She could be cranking and going that way. It's not doing anything. Right? Shoulders level, advance the shoulders together. Okay. The next one is called a touchdown. Right? Which we're in Alabama, everybody knows what a touchdown is. We'll have Lori come in, lay her upper back on the roll. So you want to aim the towel roll right in between your shoulder blades, maybe like right at the base of the shoulder blades. So we kind of scoop this a little bit more underneath. And then our arms come up and overhead like they're making a touchdown motion. And the towel then acts as a fulcrum. Right? So you're kind of rotating around the fulcrum to improve your posture. Right? So this is one of those posture correct things where, again, most people are here, and if you look, you can test it for yourself, give us the worst posture you possibly got, and try to lift your arm up, and it stops at a certain point, but then give us the best posture you possibly got, and you can get that fully up and overhead. Right? So this is a drill to work on that. So it likely takes a few deep breaths in, about 15 to 20 reps of that exercise to start seeing some benefits. So then, if you're going to stretch anything or mobilize anything, you then have to strengthen into that new range of motion, or else you're just not going to keep it. Right? So,
I mean, look, I want you to go, we can try and get the nod, or we can say that.
So get you a real nice resistance band. something we call progressive external rotation. So Lori will show this again for us in a second. We'll get something that's about belly button height, and then we're going to work on that external rotation. And it's going to be progressive such that we're going to start in this position, but then ultimately start, this is about 45 degrees, then 90 degrees. But ultimately, the end goal is to work up to where we're strong in this position. As she goes, she's keeping her elbow close to her side, and the forearm stays at about a 90-degree angle, right? Almost like you're sweeping a countertop. Okay? Right outside. And you should feel all of this in the backside of the shoulder. Again, going back to the concept of balance the shoulder, right? From the shoulder is helping getting stronger in most people. Backside is usually weak. So then she would face the band and bring the elbow out to about 45 degrees and rotate a little bit more. And you can see it's a little bit harder. And then once you get stronger there, the elbow comes up to 90 degrees. And now we're in this overhead elevated position, working external rotation. But you gotta earn it, right? You don't get to start there. Okay? Last couple of things, then we'll get some of those questions.
Let's reduce some of the gravity.
So then, to counterbalance the lats, right, which is that broad muscle in the back that we're talking about, it's a big internal rotator. The rhomboids often get neglected. So, a lot of people, when they do rowing exercises, they'll keep their elbows close only, but to really get the rhomboids and middle trapezius, you want to get the elbows up and out to the side, so you can really squeeze the shoulder blades together, right? Here, it's a lot of lats that do most of the work. But up here, you can really get that retraction and extension that the rhomboids and the posterior adults help do. Okay. So get Lori to do this and we can kind of watch from behind on this one. So okay, so most of the motion is happening here. Right? You can see shoulder blades are apart, and then she's squeezing them together as hard as she can. Okay. Minimizing the contribution of the lat muscles, really emphasizing the rhomboids. And these are kind of humbling. Right? So a lot of these we're going in the 10 to 15 rep range, right? So you might have to start out at 8, but the goal is working in a higher rep range because these muscles are anti-fatigue muscles. They need to be anti-fatigue muscles, especially if we're going overhead, because they help keep the shoulder from collapsing it. The last exercise is a similar principle to what we just did with the resistance band, but now with either a dumbbell or a kettlebell. Okay? So one hand can either support you on the table, or you can have one hand down on the leg, like the table, thumb points in towards you, and then you put the elbow out to the side. Really focusing on that control up, squeeze the shoulder blade, and then pull that up. So get Lori to demonstrate that quick.
I don't want to, I just want to stir it.
No questions.
And then, so the other common thing you see is people keep the shoulders really high when you stir it. Let's tilt a little bit more like this. And then utilizing the backside of the shoulder, the rhomboids up the middle of the trapezius instead of all the lats, which is with the elbows close. The lats are a great muscle, but we just want to make sure that the ones that are in the upper back are overlapped. Okay. So we'll also post those in the caption at the end. And then if you have any questions about the film, feel free to reach out and we'll clarify that for you. And then we'll kind of answer some of your questions. So if you have any more, send them our way. Thank you.